all right.
What's the time, because the clock's going on.
7:35.
Thank you.
Ready?
Ready?
That's, no gallows.
Call the meeting to order. This is the April 12, 2016 meeting of the Fairfield Town Plan and Zoning Commission. First item on our agenda is meeting minutes from March 29, 2016. Everybody have a copy of that?
Yes.
Can I have a motion?
Move their approval?
Motion to approve by Commissioner Francis.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Alessi. Anybody have any comments? Corrections? I took a look, I didn't see anything. Ready to vote? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Minutes are adopted unanimously. Next item is 1851 North Benson Road, request of Attorney John Fallon for a 90-day extension for filing a final subdivision map, first extension.
This was a two-lot subdivision approved by this commission on January 26th of this year, and this would be the first of two potential 90-day extensions to record the map.
Okay, as of right.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Alessi and seconded by Commissioner Coleman. Any questions or discussions on this?
This is the one on Expo Road.
Yes, North Benson. So extension as of right on request. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The extension is granted unanimously. Next item, new applications to recommend a public hearing, 452 Brookside Drive, special exception application of Abad Lubavitch of Fairfield, Inc. for additions and renovations to establish a place of worship in Zone A.
This is the former Elks Club property on Brookside Drive that's been purchased by this group looking to establish a place of worship there. They're going to renovate the building, and they're proposing to build a residence for a rabbi on the premises. It is a special exception use going from what was a membership club to a place of worship, requires a public hearing.
Very good. Motions?
Motion to approve it.
Motion to approve for public hearing by Commissioner Coleman,
Second.
second by Commissioner Francis. Any discussion? We're required to have a public hearing on the special exception.
I just have a question.
Sure.
I understand the change in use requires a,
Yep.
are we all, I mean, we're reviewing the renovations to the building because you need that and the change in use. Are we also have to approve the residence too? Is that part of this application?
Yeah, it's permitted as part of it. It's all, whether they do it all in one phase of construction remains to be seen, but they're proposing some additions to the building, the Elks Club building, for their main use for their religious studies, and also a single-family dwelling as a separate entity on the premises. It's all on the plans
Okay, it's all
that they've
together.
submitted, so.
Yep. Still one full lot or something, the residence is
Correct.
part of it?
You-
Okay.
You are recalling a subdivision application that the
Yeah.
Elks Club made several years ago to spin off a couple of lots on the north end of the property that was not approved because there were sightline issues related to those driveways. That is, they're not, the house would be on the whole, they're not proposing to separate them into multiple parcels.
Okay. I just want some background for when
Yep.
we receive the
Yep.
package in a few weeks. Thanks.
Very good. Anyone else? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Oh, that should have been a 3.
Move to public hearing unanimously. Next item is compliances, 1262 Post Road, application of Be Fresh Market for 150 square feet of seasonal outdoor seating in the Center Design District.
Okay, this site is the former post office site. The front of the building is Plan B Burger. The rear of the property is Be Fresh Market. I don't know if anybody has had the opportunity to go in there and
I
check
have.
that out. They are proposing, they have some accessory interior seating. They do, it's kind of part grocery store, part prepared food. And their present floor plan that was approved has some interior seating. They're proposing to have some tables and chairs outside seasonally in the area that was shown on their site plan. They're not proposing any, there's no service, there's no waiter or waitress service here, it's all carry-out. They're just proposing an area that if people want to avail themselves of the opportunity to eat outside. It's shown on their site plan. There is a drop. If you're familiar with the site, there's kind of a, as the site slopes back, the Plan B patio, if you will, is at a higher elevation and then ramps down. This would be down at the lower elevation. Our standard conditions for outdoor areas are that the tables and chairs be removed in the off-season, that there's no outside music or sound system, and no additional signage, and they are not proposing any.
So this would be right next to the outdoor dining patio area for the Plan B?
Plan B's, I think, is, their setup is closer to the post road, but if you're familiar with the site, it's adjacent to where there's a step down. There's a railing, that upper, if you've got that drawing in front of you, the blue square or rectangle is where they're proposing it. To the right of that is a raised, it's probably higher up in elevation by 2 or 3 feet, and there's a railing around that upper patio. This is down below that.
Okay.
And the tables are huge, 1 foot by 2.5 feet.
It's just gonna be, yeah, they don't, you know, there's no menu or table service
Right,
here.
It's just to put your sandwich on,
yeah.
yeah.
I make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Alessi,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Coleman. Okay, looks pretty routine to me. No issues regarding, the close proximity to the parking lot or anything like that. It's adjacent to a patio. Mr. Barris?
I have some questions or concerns.
Okay.
I've been to Be Fresh. This is one of those parking lots that people come to me now and say, who approved that? I don't know if you've been there before, but it's constantly staffed by somebody that's got to direct people where to park. This area gets all filled up in the back, and there's poor circulation, there's no place to go, people are backing out. If you park along here, it's hard to get out. It's a really bad parking lot. That being said, I see where this is like not really near where the problem areas of the parking lot, so I don't know whether I have a problem with them outdoor dining, but I say this is a bad parking lot. It's just poor
We
circulation
got a
right
couple
now.
of those.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to hear you say that, because I have been there, and a couple times, and one of which was on a beautiful Saturday, and
Uh-huh.
I drove right in,
Okay.
plenty of parking in the back. I actually parked right next to the handicap spaces in the front. I had no problems at all.
That's good.
Yeah. The other time I was there, maybe it's about half full. The biggest issue I see is the
Road in.
entrance. Yeah, this
Yeah.
area here, where you just you gotta stay on your side of the road, kind of thing. But otherwise, I didn't have any problem with space or and the entrance is for Be Fresh. I thought was properly situated in the back there.
Yeah.
Once you get acquainted with how it's laid out, So I didn't have a problem with it.
Yeah, the only time I went was Saturday night, and you couldn't get into the restaurant without a half-hour wait, but the parking was there.
Okay. I mean, it might have been just my experience a couple times, but I had a couple of people ask me about that parking lot too. But again, I don't think I have an issue with the outdoor dining. That's pretty much away from the back. But they do have a person like wearing,
The best.
We had
a
a
vest
couple-
directing.
We had a couple of
traffic
call
there.
early on when Plan B first opened, because, that was a big draw. I don't know, I'm not there in the evening a lot, but I know they, at least in their first couple of months, had a huge influx of people checking it out, which may have contributed to that, but I haven't had too many issues lately, but in the early going, there was we had some complaints from people parking next door, from the owner of that property, and that seems to have calmed down a little bit. So I guess depending on how busy Plan B is, my sense is that when it's crowded, it's largely due to Plan B, not necessarily the market, but hopefully the market will be successful there as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting that when you went it was a half an hour wait, and yet there was parking
Yeah,
in the lot, which is, I think is what you said.
yeah.
So,
And the first time I went, there wasn't even, it was a Saturday night too, and there wasn't even parking. So we just didn't bother going, we went somewhere else.
Just that spot.
Yeah.
no.
When I was there last Saturday, I was going to the post office and I pulled in there and parked, and that guy came over and asked me to leave.
Because you weren't parking there for their
Restaurant.
buildings. You
And
were
I said,
parking.
when I'm done with the post office, I'll go to Plan B. But he did ask me to
Wow,
leave.
you're polite.
That bigger question is, did you go?
Yeah, I did.
Good.
I was too embarrassed not to.
Well, it's their spaces. All right, well, getting back to the application for outdoor seating, we ready to vote? Does anybody else have any questions or comments on this? All right. Motion on the table is to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The item is passed unanimously. Next is 2131 Blackrock Turnpike, application of J.P. Franz and Associates for facade improvements in the design commercial district.
You may have seen a piece in the paper this past week that, or you may have noticed that, that the Angus Steakhouse has recently closed. There's a new group in here looking to open up a restaurant called Little Pub. Apparently it's their third or fourth such venture, first in Fairfield. But the facade proposal here is largely to put have a gable. If you're familiar, there's some pictures in the file, but they have a corner entry, and they want to put a gable above the door in a chimney to give it a little more presence. They want to replace the windows with the Tudor style to make it look more like they're trying to make it look like an English pub type of setting. The stone is going to remain. The stone pillars are there presently, so it's mainly the gable up above the door, changing out of the windows, and they're proposing to remove the two existing channel letter signs that the Angus has and replace it with one wooden sign above that central entrance door for a little pub. In a similar, there's an existing and proposed version of their pole sign that exists that they're kind of similarly looking to make that modification as well.
Is this any relationship to the little pub that's on Route 7? I think it's Wilton or...
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
one in Greenwich too, I think.
Yeah,
So this is
there's a
going to be
piece-
a multi, under a common
It's
scheme?
my understanding, it's
I
their
don't know if
third or
it's the same
fourth
owner.
location. I think there's one in Georgetown, one in
Yeah.
Greenwich, and one in, I forget where the
Well,
other.
it's like, it might be Wilton, or
Yep.
maybe Georgetown.
good spot.
Yeah, I know there's one in Greenwich.
Did it go through ownership change, or they just signed on to a
I
franchise?
don't know. I was just presented with these plans, but there was a piece that ran in the Post over the weekend that talks about the ownership group. So I'm surmising that that's a different ownership group than ran the Angus.
Got it.
We have a pole sign there, right?
Yes.
There is. There's a picture in the cover. If you see the Franz and Associates letter, a couple pages in, there's a photo of the existing sign in that their version of what they'd like, how they'd like to modify it. They want to basically use the existing post and clad it with wood and put a similar hanging sign for Little Pub, a little bit smaller than what's hanging there now for the Angus in wood. I think it's just an aluminum.
We took down the
Yes.
Angus sign.
It's very attractive.
Yeah.
Removing the light?
Well, their version of it doesn't show the light.
There's no living light, isn't there?
Well, I never liked that. Well, I mean, what's in front of us does not have that fixture.
Their depiction of the pole does not show the light fixture on the top.
Correct. So we're approving the pole without the light? I'm assuming.
You tell me.
Yeah,
That's what presented to us.
exactly. We're
Yeah,
approving
I
what's
mean,
depicted in the
I don't
application.
know for certain that they're looking to eliminate it. Their drawing does not show it. So if that's an important feature for you to
It says
eliminate,
utility
you can
pole.
certainly make it a condition of approval.
And we don't have uplighting allowed on that.
We are looking to light the sign. Yeah, there's a light on there
I'm
right now.
sorry.
which is- I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, it's just not an opportunity for public
Oh, I'm sorry.
input
I'm sorry.
at this moment.
I was answering your question, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't think that the existing fixture is solely for the sign. I mean, the way I'm looking at that, it looks like it's more to light the parking lot and the building.
Yeah, but the
than it is
fixture
light
that's
the
there now
sidewalk.
is not complying with our regulations, is it?
No, it's not. I don't see a light fixture on this, but if they intend to light it, we can get more detail on that.
All right, and I mean, they're entitled to light the sign consistent with our regulations.
Right, it's not proposed to be internally illuminated. If they're going to externally illuminate it, they've got to provide us with a drawing that shows it is downlit and consistent with our specs.
Right,
Can
okay,
Make that a condition of approval, or do you want to, I don't think you want to bring them back?
yeah. I think that's reasonable. You know what?
Oh, yeah, that'll approve this and then come back later on.
That's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
is that
We'll
that's
approve what's
the,
before us on the plan, and then if they want to.
or do you want to just, if we obviously got to talk about it actually by making a motion, but I'm saying you could just make it a condition of approval. of that.
I'll make a
Wanna do
motion to
that?
approve for discussion.
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion to approve is to approve the
The plans that
application.
are before
For,
us.
oh, no, well, okay, well, I was
and
going to say
with
we
a-
accept
Right,
a condition.
with a
Yes,
condition
yes.
that any lighting plan is
Should be in line with,
subject to.
we're subject to the
Our-
approval base of our
I
our
say it should
regulations.
come- I should
Correct.
come back for approval, no?
Can we do that? It's
Yeah.
going to save us having them, I mean, they have to do it the right way, but otherwise we're going to have them come back for the same sign twice. I don't know. They don't.
They're showing, if you look at that drawing of the wall sign above the door, it's on the same page. They're showing a strip, it's labeled light fixture, which I assume is a shielded light that's going to shine down and wash down
Right.
on the sign. There's a similar line drawn on the pole sign. It's not labeled, but if that's the same similar shielded light bar with a light behind it shining down on the sign, that would be permitted. So I would say anything
I don't know how you're
that's-
gonna light that sign.
What's that?
I don't know how you're gonna light that sign, though, that's a little subsidy.
Well, they'll probably have an LED strip at the top.
Right here.
With
That
the
I
shield on
understand,
it that
but- yeah,
washes
right.
down on
You
the
do
thing.
that here, and you just run the electric down the
Here's the thing, I mean, from an aesthetic point of view, I think that the, getting rid of the channel, the red channel, and replacing it with what they're proposing on the building is awfully a nice aesthetic upgrade.
Oh, there's no
Yeah,
doubt.
I mean-
There's no
and
doubt
so-
it's not better
right,
looking.
Yeah, so I mean, I think if, I mean, it sounds from Jim's description, I mean, I was looking at the plan, I didn't bring my hard copies, but it does seem like it's feasible they can do downlighting with what they're proposing. I don't even know if we need, it looks like what they're proposing fits the downlighting. If they're not, they have to be in compliance with regulations.
Right,
So
well-
if they, right, I mean,
I would agree. Here's my issue. There have been a number of problems with signs and lighting around town. One, as a prime example for me, is the Athena Diner, which still vacillates its color inappropriately. We went through round and round. So it's not clearly depicted on this plan. I would agree that if they put an LED strip downlighting the same way that they show on the sign on the building, on the pole sign, just above the letters, little pub, and it would be beautiful. And I think none of us would take issue with approving that. But I do think that the motion should be to approve with the condition that the pole sign lighting should be subject to coming back with a proposal consistent with our regulations.
Well, that's fine. That's what it will say, but I would suggest to you that if that is in fact what they're doing, then we'll confirm that. If they're doing something other than that, we will bring it back for your
Okay.
review.
So we could say that if that is indeed the
Yeah.
plan, then
Yeah.
we give you the authority to
Yeah.
approve that over the counter. But if it's anything different from what we just described, then
Fair
it's got to
enough.
come back here.
Got it.
Okay?
I accept that.
So do I.
Yeah, okay.
All right? Okay. So,
Yes,
Mr. Leslie, that's your motion?
That's my motion.
And you're good?
Seconded.
Second? Okay. Anybody else have any comments on this?
One of the recommendations in the comp plan we're going to talk about for Blackrock Turnpike says to, how every shopping center has its own parking lot, and they're all fenced or whatever. One recommendation is to eliminate the barriers to pedestrian traffic between commercial properties and encourage better pedestrian linkages between such properties to reduce excessive vehicle motion movements. And they seem to be encouraging unifying as many parking lots as can be. Would this be an opportunity to do that, or is that?
No, it's a
beyond
different
the
elevation
scope?
over there.
Yeah,
So-
I can respond to that. The short answer is, no, it would not. We've had some success with getting joint access agreements on adjoining parking lots, but this lot, the northerly end of the lot by the hardware store,
Is
there's a,
higher, isn't it?
between the adjacent property, there's a retaining wall that
Yeah.
it drops down, so there is not
I
a,
thought I was
there-
remembering that. Okay.
the topography would prevent it there. But
Okay.
the next property over, for example, where Starbucks is, we've had success getting joint access between the Old Navy site and where Starbucks is to create that kind of
Okay.
access. So we have had some success, but I don't believe this would be a candidate for that.
The parking lot, the Dolan building there, the parking lot is also in the back,
Correct.
and that is
Right.
not linked through the back.
It's not. There's another building behind that.
Well, they could be linked. There's a barrier back there.
There is, but I think there's another building behind there that would really prevent effective, well, that may be true. I can't rule it out, but they're not proposing any change to the parking layout as part of this application, so I
Yeah.
don't think this would be the application that would trigger
Right.
such a requirement, but should they
It
propose to
says-
do so, then we can take a look at that.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, what's in front of us is for facade renovations
Right.
and a sign plan.
Right.
They're not restriping, they're not changing any parking spaces, they're not changing curb cuts, they're not,
Right,
we're not dealing with landscaping, anything like that.
right.
So,
I think it's a good improvement. Been to the restaurant Route 7, I think it'd be a great spot for
I think it's terrific.
for Blackrock Turnpike.
Okay, so we got a motion, seconded with conditions. Anybody have anything else? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? All right, passes, the motion as made passes unanimously. Next is 50 Umpqua Place, application of accent signs for a sign plan of the Center Design District.
All right, this is the former Blynn's site that is now under medical office, as you may recall. They're proposing a sign that meets the 10-foot requisite setback from the street. It will be facing in the row, in the center of the row of parking. It's a 24-foot approximate sign. Here it is. You should have this in your packet. It's a 24-foot, it's aluminum base with acrylic letters on aluminum posts. It's 24 feet, 10-foot setback, and otherwise meets our requirements to identify the pediatric healthcare tenant within the building. The previous sign is shown on the survey was kind of at the corner. They're moving it to this, centering it in the site, and it meets the required 10-foot setback.
Excellent, thank you. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve by Commissioner Kennelly,
Second.
second by Commissioner Coleman.
Meets the regs.
Yep.
And then
Does not appear to present any issues at all. Okay, we're all good. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed, abstentions? The item carries unanimously. Next item is planning discussion, the Plan of Conservation and Development update.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I think you all should have received, email-wise, a copy of the updated Plan of Conservation and Development. Just to back up a little bit, just to refresh everyone's memory before I get to the procedure, is the plan is basically made up of a couple sections, but two main sections are the first section, which is the section we're considering, or had the major update, is basically a snapshot of the community based on the most up-to-date census information. And that's essentially what that section is, and it's been completed by the Greater Bridgeport Regional Planning Agency, which, by the way, has gone through a very similar process for the entire region, which was very advantageous to our timing because, again, as I mentioned, all the information in there is updating, is right up to date as far as census information and other information. The rest of the document essentially is policies and recommendation, planning policy recommendation for land use in the town of Fairfield. The structure is basically what the plan does is it identifies characteristics that make individual neighborhoods unique. It highlights the most, the good, best characteristics, and what it does is it recommends policies to maintain those characteristics. It also makes some recommendations for additional type uses or ways to deal with land use, and it also makes recommendations for policies. If you remember our discussion about the process here, what we decided to do some time ago is complete the plan, update it as to the most recent information I mentioned to you, have that plan, have a hearing, and endorse it by this commission, and then a second part of our review.
That must be yours.
Sorry.
Second part of our review, I was just dancing to the music, was to go neighborhood by neighborhood and reviewing all the policies and characteristics identified there and update it. That process, I think, what we discussed in general would be such that we would hold a hearing on one or two of the different neighborhoods. We would contact neighborhood associations and any other groups or boards or commissions that would be interested in that particular area of town. We'd have them make comments at our hearings. Once we received that information, we would then take that and make whatever modifications or additions we would to that second part of the plan. So what we are requesting the board to do tonight is just basically recommend to hearing this document. Reason why we're again, based on any comments you may have just on that front section. The other thing I just mentioned really quickly is there has been parts of this that we have gone through hearing and approved.
Commerce Drive.
Yeah, the Commerce Drive area.
Bike and pedestrian plan.
And there's also, we did some bike and ped stuff.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, both those
26.
sections generated changes to our zoning regulations, which is essentially the process that you go through, you should go through, when you go ahead and modify your regulations, as you review and modify your plan, and hopefully you establish regulations that support these policies that you propose to maintain these positive characteristics. So we've done that. Those have been incorporated in this document. So that also updates this document to as close as we have to right now to being updated. What the process is based on the state statutes for us is we need, once you recommend this to hearing, prior to going to hearing, we need a 65-day, prior to 65 days to the hearing, we submit this to the Board of Selectmen for their review and comment. Within 65 days prior to the hearing, we also submit it to the MetroCog, the Regional Planning Agency, that essentially assisted us in doing that first portion. 35 days prior to the hearing, we post it on the town website. 35 days prior to the hearing, we put copies with the town clerk. If there's any section that the Board of Selectmen have an issue with or do not, for some reason, endorse, then, have a problem with it. If the commission doesn't feel that the change is based on their recommendations, it would require a 2/3 vote by this board if you were somehow if their recommendation was somehow inconsistent with what you thought was appropriate. I don't see that happening, especially with this first part, because it's based on, but that's just part of the statute. There's also within 35 days of adoption, we must post on a website, and then 65 days of adoption, we submit it to OPM, and with descriptions of any inconsistencies with the state POCD, which I'm sure there will not be any inconsistencies, because this was kind of done at this point with the help of MetroCog. They're very familiar with this document, and I don't anticipate any recommendations or descriptions of inconsistency with the state plan of conservation development. So that's where we're at. I think it's important that we do endorse, have a hearing, and establish this for no other reason as this portion of the document really hasn't been updated since 2000. So it really brings us up to date with that portion of it. Once that's established, we have that, then we would go through the second phase of reviewing each individual neighborhood,
Planning.
and going through that process.
Yeah.
So chapter, I'm sorry, can I ask you a question just real quick?
Sure.
Thanks, sorry. Chapter 1, which was all that data, I read that today, that's the first kind of major change. And everything we saw there that's through almost to 2013 in some of the statistics,
Yep.
but 2010 and 12, that's going to be inserted into this document to replace what's there.
That's correct.
And that's really all we're
Right.
going to be
No.
endorsing.
Well, what we did
and
also,
then we begin a process.
was
to
we
look
updated
at
the other
this.
parts
Right.
with the sections that
Right.
we've
Oh,
already.
all right,
approved.
okay. Right.
Please, so Joe and I were Fairfield's liaisons to the regional planning agency that was undertaking a study of the 5 towns, right, for an updated regional master plan. Through that process, they looked at each of the 5 towns on all of the metrics that are required for our master plan as well. So it's not just census data. And they actually took inventories of roads and land use and, all sorts of stuff.
Mass transit, I saw.
Mass
yeah.
transit,
Yep,
right. That portion of our master plan had been revised, like, here and there, little stuff, but really had not undergone this kind of revision since 2000. In the meantime, we did revise other sections, like Commerce Drive, Bike Ped. We passed these incrementally. So we're now at a point where we've got a comprehensive revision, which includes all the demographics and census information and mass transit and all that first preliminary stuff. We've got all these incremental revisions that we've done over the course of the last couple of years into one update, okay? What we want to do is move this through the formal process of actually updating the master plan so that not only do we accomplish that, but we comply with the state statute that requires us to do that, and we will be doing so early, which is also good. But then after that point, in a continuing effort to revise the master plan and plan for the future, we want to have a process by which we look at each section relating to the different areas of town, okay?
Which isn't required by the state?
No.
that would- Okay.
It's not required by the state. What would then be required by the state is simply for us to continue to update the master plan every 10 years, right? So we will have discharged our obligation under the state statute, and what we're talking about is doing something fairly significant
Yeah.
over and above that,
Beyond.
Yes.
Got it.
okay? It was my goal to engage on an ongoing basis representatives of each of the areas of town. We hear from them all the time. You've got the neighborhood associations, you've got independent groups of residential areas that come in and talk to us and so forth. And they all have made on many occasions suggestions when an application comes in, yeah, this really shouldn't be this way. We really shouldn't allow that. We really, and the point is, well, that's what our regulations say. That's what our master plan says. If we want to change those, then we've got to undertake this process. And so, on sort of a rolling basis, it is, our suggestion that we approve this comprehensive update, we get that out of the way, and then we schedule public hearings on town, area by area, and reach out to, those groups and so forth to solicit input and have public hearings and take their suggestions, and then come back to our working session, taking into account everything that we learned through those hearings and such, and revise those sections one by one. And then that will form the basis for a further update that we'll put out to another public hearing where we then update the master plan again. So that, I think, is what I wanted to get
I
out
have a
there.
couple calls, go ahead, sorry. Go ahead.
Commissioner Barrett?
Yeah, one, I kind of thought, just, this is the first one, that the bike ped and the Commerce Drive, we already approved that as part of the master
correct.
plan. So that's already in it, but.
Well, the Commerce Drive piece, yes. The bike ped stuff, not necessarily.
Right,
You
we
had a
have the
presentation. We've adopted
Regulations.
several of the regulatory recommendations that master plan recommended that were relevant to
Okay.
the zoning regulations. The plan itself is a little bit broader document that now is going to reside within, is proposed to reside in here, so.
It's in
we
the
kind of-
information we
We
sent
were
you.
ahead of ourselves in some respects, so that we've kind of implemented some of those regulations first.
Okay, so this is gonna be, like, we have a document that we have right now that a lot of us have old tattered copies of, dated 2000. So this, if we submit it to public hearing, if we approve it, if we review it, submit it to public hearing, it's gonna be section 1, plus all this other stuff will be a new POCD with a date of 2016 or something.
Correct.
like that.
Correct.
And then,
And I would not continue to talk about it as it's just a new section
No.
1. I mean, it is a revision to the master plan, incorporating changes to, among other things, section 1, including the Commerce Drive section, including the bike ped section, including other little tweaks and things like that, which are all in the draft. And yes, to your point, one document, stamped approved, dated 2016.
yeah, and I have no concerns with that. I think that's a great idea too, because there was a question before about like doing every 10 years. We really hadn't, but we'd adopted the Commerce Drive, and it's not a strict 10 years, because I remember going through this discussion.
We met the
Yeah, we met the
minimum requirement.
And I'm not- Here's what I'm thinking though, but beyond that, like that's all good, and I realize it's not just demographics, there's a lot of stuff there, and I appreciate that. This part about the neighborhoods, it's gonna take a while.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the guts of
Yes.
it, and when we talk about things, just being consistent with the master plan, or how the master plan is used in the public hearing, or the application concept, very little of it's gonna go back to that first section about,
Yeah.
some of it will, like, we'll talk about what's a major road, what's what arteries and things like that, absolutely, we've used that, but a lot of it goes to the thing, we discourage
Right.
encroachment in here, we discourage-
Absolutely.
and all those things.
And
haven't
that's what
been-
we're talking about getting to.
It's important to have the technical
Yeah, I-
backup for anything you do in this, but there's no question, a lot of the policies are just that.
Right.
It's just recommendations.
Right, and there's no disagreement from me at all on this approach, and I think that's great. I'm just thinking ahead, policies, it's gonna take a while to go through
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna take
11
years.
neighborhoods, planning areas, whatever you wanna call them, even if you do 2 at a time, okay, that's a meeting. That meeting's gonna have input. Input's gonna require us to kick things around. What do we really think about these things? And those are very important things. Those become the cornerstones of decisions later on.
Correct. We're gonna have to have planning meetings after these individual public hearings on these neighborhoods, where we come back to wordsmith, taking into account what we've learned through that process, and agreeing on proposed revisions to the neighborhood sections of the master plan. Once we've done that piece, we go through this process all over again, where we submit it to the first selectman, we send it to the clerk, we put it to public hearing, to hopefully then adopt a further revision to the master plan. And when we do that, we will have completely updated.
My experience, because we lived through the 2000 one, is that and it sounds onerous, but really, the process is the learning portion. That, I mean, once you're done with the document, it's done, thank you very much, but really, those hearings and those discussions are really what you get out of this process, it's the whole thing about making, the making of the document is really where you learn and where you really get a lot done. Once the final document is present, but really, that process is really.
The value.
Exactly, that's the valuable part.
Do you have a time frame, or Joe, do you have a time frame in which you expect to cover these 11?
Yeah, well, I mean, I got to guesstimate, this process is going to get us through the summer, just because of the referrals
Right, the 16.
and whatever. So, we're looking probably starting this September, October sometime. What I think we would request after this is done and approved is that you take a look and maybe pick which neighborhood you wish to address first. That process in and of itself is going to take us reaching out, and an advantage here is we have very organized town committee meeting, groups in town. So and I know the selectman has contact names for all of them. What we would do is contact them first. If it's Commerce Drive, for instance, we would contact the Economic Development Commission. If there's any other boards or commissions that are involved in that particular neighborhood, we would request them also. We would get copies of our current plan out to them, and they would review it, and then hopefully they would come to the hearings and make whatever recommendations.
So you're thinking maybe 2 years?
Could be 2 years, yeah, sure.
I will
This is a long-term plan.
Yeah, I will say that I agree completely with what Seth said, is that no matter how we lay out the plan of attack, it's likely to take longer than we expect.
Right.
It's just the nature of how it goes. So some of those meetings in that's going to be driven by whatever schedule the commission's comfortable with in terms of potentially requiring extra sessions beyond your normal. If our regular business, depending on the volume of business we have to schedule for normal public hearings, will drive whether or not we need to have separate and distinct sessions for this or not.
So-
I envision that some of those might be more formal proceedings as a hearing, some might be more informal, where we're in this room with perhaps smaller constituent groups for more informal conversation. I think it's probably going to be a combination of those things.
Right. And so, to that end, and I think I don't want to steal your thunder, but I think it behooves us all to think about doing this over and above our ordinary, regular meetings and business. And, like Jim mentioned, depending upon the workflow in a given month, we decide that we're going to have an extra meeting dedicated solely to, public hearing on 2 neighborhoods. And, get started at 7:30 and just
Look, if you started in October,
knock it out.
If you started in October, let's say, and did 2 per meeting, and we did 1 every month that way, you could do it in 5. At least do those in 5 months. My concern, though, Jim, when you raised this idea of sometimes we'd be here, sometimes we'd be at say McKinley, my honest concern here is the current document we have, and I think one of the things you notice from looking at the data is how much stability actually there is in there. And I was shocked how in Stratfield in 611, there was 12,973 houses, now there's 13, like you guys are always busting me about, there's not that much building out, Jim, right? It was only a tiny percentage of extra houses in a very large span of time. I mean, not that some of them don't hurt, like the knockdown we have on Stratfield right now too, but my point being to you, Mr. Chairman, is just this. I think it would be pretty wise to consider the possibility, when you get going on this, to make sure that, I think people have sort of assumptions already about where their neighborhood stands in the current plan of conservation and development. If we are going to look at that language, and we are maybe going to be changing the things where it goes from discourage encroachment in this area versus welcome it, we have to be careful. I think it's vital that you consider doing a letter that's penned by yourself, and maybe with Joe or somebody, or maybe signed in conjunction with the first selectman, so it's bipartisan, whatever you guys want to work out, which would lay out exactly what we're planning on doing, say, beginning in the fall.
I think that's a great idea.
And if we've worked out the schedule where we're all willing to commit to say, okay, every 15th of the month, I'm just saying it, we're all going to bear down, and here's our 10. And you let everybody know in advance. I don't want there ever to be a sense from anybody in these neighborhoods that the fix was in, that the
So-
lawyers and the people like that who care about this stuff, this kind of the people who really, that they'll somehow know and the public won't. So if you do that, I think that'd be great. That's my suggestion.
You raise a good point. I certainly, I didn't mention it until you just raised it, but it was our intention to widely publicize this.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I think you
You know.
should definitely, I mean, I know that
And-
Kevin did this when we did the Blue Ribbon Commission.
Right.
And so, Kevin Gumper, when he
Yep.
was chairman. So I would just suggest that
Absolutely.
you consider
And,
penning something like that.
You know,
and
you
do a
think
good
about
job.
it in the nature of like the Commerce Drive study, where, you know, there were multiple invitations for roundtables or
Right.
public hearings or meetings and the like. And it's going to be a long process, there's no doubt. And I think, you know, you mentioned, given certain neighborhoods, we'd send a request out to economic development. I think it should go out to, you know, all of the town boards and representatives, you know? We send it to the RTM members, and we say, hey, this is what is in the works. This is, you know, part of our job, okay? And it's interesting because, on the one hand, you say there's sensitivity, and I acknowledge it, to the issue you raise, and then on the other hand, there's criticism for us not doing
things.
anything.
Absolutely.
Okay? So, you know, let's do it and make sure that everybody knows about it, and that it's all in, you know, received in the manner in which it's intended.
One of
Do you
the,
find that 2 meetings, 2 neighborhoods at once really works? You don't have to
depends
do
on the
it.
neighborhood. I
Depends
mean,
on the
neighborhood.
it's not going to be
Oh,
one
I'm sure.
size fits all, I don't
Right.
think, and we'll kind of,
Yeah.
I mean, certainly talking about
But really
the center of
residential
town
ones, it works.
is going to be one that's going to probably be,
Sure,
you know, by
just
itself.
the
So,
Yeah.
you know, it may be unrealistic to think you're going to do more than one, but some are kind of joined, like, you know, Bill Plain, Tungus Hill, or
Stratford and
Grassmere, or
North,
stuff
yeah.
like that, where I think the
Stratford.
more
All
strictly
residential.
residential ones
Yeah,
might be,
You could get away with 2.
yeah, but when you're talking about
Yeah.
Some of them might
commercial.
require multiple meetings.
Yeah.
I
Of
mean,
course,
you know,
you're gonna, we're just gonna kind of lay out a framework of how you're gonna proceed and then, you know, adapt to how it goes.
And you raised the Center Design District. That might be a public hearing and also a meeting where we invite the Office of Economic Development and the First Selectman's Office and, you know, other interested groups to come in and talk about ideas.
Well, should we pencil in the 3rd Tuesday of, you know, now we meet the 2nd and 3rd. Should we
Bless you.
start penciling it in come September?
Not until I'm sure we'll discuss it.
I don't think we're there yet. I mean, I'm not penciling in any dates. We got to first get this through
Yeah.
the first process. You know, we're going to come up with a proposed plan and timeline where maybe we look at, you know, isolating a particular day to have it, but, you know, perhaps the regular meetings can accommodate, you know, an extra item on the agenda. So we're just going to have to work that out, but I think that, you know, as a concept, this is what.
Yeah, and one other thing, what I was gonna say before is, as part of the adoption process for this comprehensive document as the Phase 1 adoption, if you will, requires that we post it on the town's website. There's an opportunity there to accompany that with some sort of outline of
Right.
what you all agree on, what the game plan going forward is going to be, so there's no mystery about this. That
Right.
how come you're not talking about my neighborhood when we're talking about this document? So we
Right.
can spell that out, so hopefully those expectations of everybody will align as we
Right.
proceed.
So so to that end, sooner rather than later, we should
Yeah.
start working on
Yeah.
some summary of what we're talking about here.
Yes, we've been thinking about that, and we didn't want to, obviously, we wanted to have it in your hands before we throw it out there to the world for their comment, which is all part of the deal.
Commissioner Barrett?
Yeah, I have a couple ideas. One, I mean, and I have no issue with the process, so I think this is great. I think it's great to get a fully, you know, such a revamped version of the plan out there, heard, potentially approved. As far as this neighborhood stuff goes, just this is a couple comments to think about as you're preparing, because it's going to be time before we start this. That I would encourage everybody to read all the sections again. Some of the things that are valid in 2000 are still valid today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah,
absolutely,
absolutely.
there's some good stuff there that was well thought out.
Right.
And it may still be our overarching policy as far as the neighborhood. I would think a lot of it would be. Second thing is that we've sat in hearings for years, and we've heard about reference at the plan. So any of the things where you're thinking about a particular neighborhood, you heard something, you go, gee, it should say something about that. I would, encourage people to start thinking that stuff so we can have input. Because we're putting a lot on the neighborhood, and some will come in with a lot of input, and some may not come in with that much, and some may be very valuable input, and some people may things that we just flat out disagree with. Again, just because, it's a iterative, collaborative process. So I think, the collective wisdom of the 10 of us, can be thought of in advance. Even as you're doing public hearings in the next few months, if people reference the POCD about a thing, just think, oh, well, maybe it should have something about that in there. So I think that could be good preparation. At least myself, I'm going to start to think about along those lines.
Procedural question, do you need a formal vote from us tonight to move this
Yeah,
forward?
I think you can put it in the minutes that you recommend this document to hearing.
To hear it.
Yeah, and then we'll go through the
Sure.
referral process.
You want to make a motion to recommend it to a public hearing?
I do.
Very good. Motion to move the draft revised POCD to public hearing by Commissioner Coleman.
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioners Corcoran and Alessi. Any
Pick one.
further comment or discussion on what we've talked about? Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Move to public hearing unanimously. Anybody else have anything further?
Good job.
All right, we'll close the public hearing. I'll close the meeting.
Back on the,
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes when I make an absolute statement of fact